One of my favorite people to talk to is the great Stephen Moore, who is the chief economist at the Heritage Foundation, also a member of the IBD Brain Trust. That's what it says right at the bottom of the piece that he wrote here for IBD. Welcome, my friend. How are you, Stephen?
Hey, Steve. It's great to be with you.
Always great to talk to you. You know, this is such an important story that you have written about. And boy, oh boy, you know, we all talk about Keystone and Keystone and Keystone. But, you know, there's as you wrote about, so you do know, but many people don't, there's a project that is going forward that our own military has declared and our own Congress, in many respects, has declared is a threat, a direct threat to our national security. And yet this green pipeline, if you will, is going ahead or is scheduled to go ahead as planned with support of the president.
Yeah, it's called a double standard, Steve. And, you know, the old saying was, with Democrats, if it weren't for double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. And so essentially what's happened here, I mean, it's really an amazing story that everyone knows what happened to Keystone. They killed it because the president said it might not be, in quote, the country's national interest. And yet they have a green project that is a transmission line from windmills that's 500 miles long, and the transmission lines have to be built through a military base. And on the military base, this is one of our most important military bases, Steve, because we use it for testing all of our weaponries, including our missile systems, which, as you know, are critical for our national security.
And that's down in New Mexico, right? In New Mexico.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So the Department of Defense has said, wait a minute, you can't build transmission lines here because this is going to disrupt our operations and put security at risk. Twice they've made that designation. Well, the Obama administration is saying, wait, we got to get this thing built. This is windmills we're out here. So they're trying to bypass the Department of Defense. They're trying to, a new study that came out that validated that this was going to interfere with our national defense. And yet the Obama administration wants to fast track this. And so the point is, here's a project that actually is going to do damage to our national interest, but because it's green energy, the Obama administration is doing everything it can to make sure it flies.
Right, and this is just a perfect example of the double standard, of the nonsense. I just, later on we're going to talk on the show to the founder of ClimateDepot.com, Mark Morano, and one of the things I'm going to bring up to him is a number of stories out there. Not only are the windmills all over the country killing birds, I mean lots and lots, thousands of birds, but also American eagles. And some of these birds are being burnt to death by the solar panels. Either they think it's water and they fly into it and they burn immediately, or there's these solar like lasers that come from one particular kind of solar panel, and the birds are flying through it and they're losing their feathers and they're crash landing. And the administration couldn't care less. But a smelt. Now, I eat smelts when they're in season. I like them. I didn't know there were different breeds or kinds. But to protect a certain kind of smelt, they're telling California farmers who need water, screw you.
Yeah. Well, that's because, Steve, when it comes to green energy, you know, everything is expendable, including endangered species. And, you know, here's another double standard. I've written about this for years, that, you know, the green energy groups even have a carve-out of the Endangered Species Act law, so that if they kill an endangered species, they don't get penalized and they don't get thrown in jail. But meanwhile, you know, out in North Dakota, there was an incident where like 5 mallard ducks were killed by an oil pit, and my God, they want to put these people in jail.
Right.
So it's a complete double standard. And my point is, look, you know, if this really is this project called SunZia out in New Mexico, if it really is a danger to our national security, which Obama's own Defense Department says it is, then don't build this thing. I mean, you know, we don't need these windmills that much that we're going to put our security at risk, or build. Oh, here's the great part of the story. So then they said to this group SunZia, well, okay, build the transmission lines so that they don't interfere, you know, go around the military base. And they said, we can't do that because we'd have to comply with all these new environmental regulations, and it would take years of delay. And I thought, Steve, you know, welcome to the real world where every business
right
has to deal with every day. And you know, the last line of my piece is, you know, they're just kind of trying to, you know, steamroller this through. And I said, if only the government treated all taxpayers like they're treating this green energy company, what a wonderful country this would be.
And you bring up, I think the last word in your piece is Solyndra. And you do harken back to Solyndra. And I got to tell you, you know, Trey Gowdy, who's going to head the Benghazi Special Counsel, he's going to lead it up, the select committee, I should say. You know, he read the riot act to the media. He called the media and he said, here's what you should be asking. Here's what I'm going to be asking. And what you have privileges as the media. You should be a watchdog. You have responsibilities of oversight. And he went through a bunch of Benghazi questions. But, you know, this is not being talked about. This is outrageous. And anybody who hears this with half a brain would say, this can't stand. This is outrageous. So kudos to you for coming up with this. And I just hope that the pressure that will mount because of your piece will thwart this nonsense.
Well, thank you for helping publicize it, and we got to get this word out that there's this incredible double standard when it comes. You know, we should be building Keystone. My God, we're talking about 10,000 jobs, and those are jobs that would pay $80, $90, $100,000 a year. We should be doing this, Steve. There's no reason not to.
All right, now remember the sequester. Remember the sequester. It was going to be doomsday. It was going to be doomsday. Well, there's a report out, which I'm sure you're familiar with. This is from Fox News. Tom Coburn is demanding answers as to why the Obama administration repeatedly warned taxpayers that the $85 billion in spending cuts, which went into effect March 13th, would threaten hundreds of thousands of jobs because lawmakers on both sides of the aisle say that well, I don't know. That's a wrong line. It turns out the budget cuts, though, led to one job being lost in 23 federal agencies. One job lost. And they told us, you don't remember what they told us, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people would lose their jobs.
And you know, the reason for that, Steve, is that it turns out that when you ask federal agencies, that they have to, when you require them to cut maybe 5 or 10% of their budget, which is what they did. And by the way, is there a single agency in government that can't save 5 cents out of the dollar? We learned that they could. But you know what? When we made them do that, they found out, we do have a lot of waste. We do have a lot of areas where we could, cut in terms of, our paper clips and maybe not do so many conferences and so much travel. And by the way, I think there's a lot more where that came from, Steve. I think we could do another 10, 15, 20% cut with no problem in taxpayer. But remember when this started, remember what Obama tried to do? He tried to close down the air traffic control system.
That's absolutely right.
Amazing, isn't it?
Absolutely right, and this is what it results in. All right, here's another goodie. Testifying before a Senate committee today, the Fed Chair Janet Yellen said a minimum wage increase would likely have some negative effects on jobs, even though she's not sure just how much. Well, this is just, this just backs up what people like you, and you're the expert, and me, who's not the expert, I just go on common sense, have been saying.
Yeah, well, look, every economist, if I teach an economics course, okay, Steve, if my students wrote a paper saying it's a good thing to raise the minimum wage and it's not going to destroy jobs, they would flunk my class. I mean, this is basic economics 100. If you make something more expensive, like labor, businesses are going to want less of it. This is, for those of you who had economics 100, the first rule of economics is demand curves are downward sloping. When something gets more expensive, people want less of it. And you're going to price a lot of workers out of the job market. And Steve, I've told you this. My first job was $2.35 an hour. It was a minimum wage job. If they had a $10 an hour minimum wage back then, I never would have had that first job, and I wouldn't be talking to you on the radio right now.
Right? No, sure. And to constantly falsely, represent or misrepresent, I guess is more accurate, who the people are that are earning these minimum wages in these minimum wage jobs.
Most of them are teenagers.
Absolutely.
Most of them are teenagers and young people.
Absolutely.
That's the first job. They're starter jobs, Steve.
Okay, some economic news. I know that the first-time unemployment rate, job claims was down today, but more importantly, inside the numbers of the jobs numbers from last month, where there's where a lot of jobs created, we find that I think that the figure was there are 8 million more people job eligible between 16 and 65. 8 million more, yet 500,000 people less in the labor force. And 25 to 29-year-olds or 24 to 29-year-olds, all-time low participation in the labor force. This is disastrous.
Yeah, and the problem is, I've been quipping, and I'm only saying this half jokingly, when Obama's going to leave office, we'll have a zero unemployment rate because nobody's going to be in the workforce. I got to run.
All right, Steve, take care. Take care. Stephen Moore, ladies and gentlemen, of the Heritage Foundation, the chief economist at the Heritage Foundation, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. I hope he's all right. I don't know. I mean, we're done anyway, but I don't know who was pulling him aside there. I hope he wasn't going through customs or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, forget the unemployment number. that is meaningless unless you start looking at the people in the labor force and the people dropping out of the labor force and the people taking lesser jobs, not satisfied with the new job that they finally have found. We are headed in a direction that has to be changed. It has to be changed. And that's why when 65% of the people tell Pew that they want the next president to have policies that are different than Obama, yet Obama was in Hollywood last night talking to Barbara Streisand and a bunch of other bigwigs and said, we have public opinion on our side on all the issues. Baloney. Salami, salami baloney, as Popeye would say on the Steve Malzberg Show.